Becoming the best Super Earth has to offer is no easy feat in and of itself, but you've stepped up to defend our values and you've become a Helldiver. In today's mandatory training broadcast, we're going to be taking a look at some advice from long-serving veterans on how to tackle the Helldive difficulty and ensure the best possible chances of success on every mission you undertake. The advice you receive in this program will not be for beginners and is instead specifically focused on high-level difficulty tactics and knowledge. If you're a new recruit fresh out of basic, we suggest this alternative training program also featured on this network. Lastly, be sure to show your support for this network by subscribing for further videos. This is mandatory and non-compliance will result in a referral to your democracy officer for re-education. Your training program will now commence. First things first, let's start off with your equipment and stratagem choices. Selecting your stratagems carefully and working with your squad mates to make sure all bases are covered will be important to your continued survival. Contrary to popular belief to some, there are many options, but covering the important things will increase your chances of success. On high-level difficulties like Helldive, we see higher success percentages in archive missions, where all squad members have something to deal with high-value targets especially. Let's take a look at some examples of stratagem choices from veterans of the ongoing galactic conflict and break them down in detail. In all of these selections, you should see examples of a team selecting stratagems capable of dealing with different scenarios in the field. Importantly, note that every single Helldiver in these squads have brought either a rail cannon strike, an orbital laser, or an eagle equipped with a 500 kilogram bomb. Quite simply, on Helldive, you're going to come up against more high-value targets like Terminid Bile Titans or automaton hulks and tanks. Each member of the team being prepared to deal with those threats will give you more reliable outcomes to encounters with them. Common choices for other airstrikes or orbital ordnance includes Eagle cluster strikes, Eagle airstrikes, Eagle napalm, and orbital airbursts. This isn't to say these are the best choices, but it's important to note that there are several alternative options that still perform incredibly well, such as orbital EMS strikes, orbital gas strikes, and even the orbital precision strikes that are standard issue for all new recruits. As a final note, consider that at least one of your team members bringing a tactical backpack, such as a shield generator, will allow for them to be distributed to your team throughout the mission. You won't all start with them, of course, but it will eventually allow for most, if not all, of your team to have that extra equipment available to them. Just remember that if you're the person responsible for the shield generator pack, you should be calling it in every time it's available. The same principle applies to the support weapons that will accompany you on your dive into the belly of the beast. Once again, referring to missions in the archives, we've found a statistical increase in success rates for teams of Helldivers that choose 2 support weapons for dealing with heavy class enemies, such as the Quasar Cannon or EAT launchers, 1 support weapon for dealing with medium class enemies like the Machine Gun or Auto Cannon, and lastly 1 support weapon for clearance of large densities of smaller enemies like the Stalwart or Grenade Launcher. This combination is just an example, but will give you the tools necessary to combat any enemy that stands between your team and mission success. Super Earth science teams encourage experimentation with new combinations, especially after changes have been made to armaments, which they are constantly working to improve. Keep up to date with the latest news from science teams and be sure to take note when something has changed so you can give it a try for yourself and be on the cutting edge of new frontline technology. Lastly, only the best Helldivers diversify their grenade choices. A common selection is the impact grenade, which is incredibly useful in multiple situations, but other grenade types such as the stun grenade or even the incendiary grenade do have their place on the battlefield and can often make for a more powerful tool of democracy in the right hands. Stun grenades can halt the advance of berserkers, hulks, and chargers to allow an easy shot with a support weapon for a one-hit kill, and often is a lifesaver for Helldivers in a pinch. Incendiary grenades, on the other hand, can be used to great effect on a bug breach to ensure that any emerging bugs are met with a warm welcome similar to that of a napalm strike. It might not kill, but it'll sure as hell leave a mark. Now, once you've selected your equipment, knowing how to use it is the next step up the ladder. For example, example, if you are one of your team members who are equipped with a quasar, cannon, or EAT launcher, your largest priority is taking out targets like Bile Titans, Chargers, Factory Striders, Hulks, or tanks. Your other team members aren't equipped to deal with these threats in the same way that you are, so to give them space to do what they do best, you'll need to keep those high-value targets off their back. If, however, you've chosen to pick up the likes of weapons like the machine gun or autocannon, your primary target should be anything with a medium armor rating or high health pool. Hive guards, bile spewers, devastators, and berserkers are just a few of the target types you should be putting above all others. Lastly, if you're running a weapon specialized in large-scale clearance operations like the stalwart or grenade launcher, your best bet is to focus on Terminid breaches or automaton dropships to ensure large waves of enemies can't build up and wash over your team. Hold the line for them and pour the lead downrange until they learn their lesson. Most importantly of all, if you possess a weapon or grenade that is capable of destroying bot fabricators or closing bug holes, make sure you're doing it. The sooner the better. This might sound obvious, but on a Helldive it's all the more important as your team may not be running grenades capable of fulfilling this role for themselves, and staying on the move against overwhelming odds can be incredibly beneficial. Alright Diver, that's your equipment and stratagems accounted for. Now let's get to the real meat and potatoes, shall we? We've interviewed some of Super Earth's finest war heroes for this advice, so you can be certain it'll see you right when defending Lady Liberty. Now let's start with coordination and communication. These are two of the most important factors to success on a Helldive. You might get away with heroics or sample collection runs on lower difficulties by yourself, but not here. Stick together and watch each other's backs. Try not to separate in the heat of battle and cover each other during reloads or stratagem calls. The only time you should even consider breaking formation is on very particular missions, like civilian evacuations or the recent Termicide Tower deactivation missions. In these specific instances, getting the job done quickly takes priority. To beat these missions, stay on the move and stay ahead of the enemy forces for the best chances of success. You can have part of your squad draw the enemy's attention with a tactical diversion, whilst a single Helldiver completes the objective. The longer you're there, the more reinforcements you'll be facing, and as such, covering more ground in a quicker time frame is essential. Especially for civilian evacuations, it's important to drop away from the objective, have your team lead around the enemy whilst you take the objective on your shoulders and free those civilians. Bringing some turrets can help keep any stray patrols from calling in reinforcements and keep them off your back for long enough to complete your mission. To make quick work of blitz missions, consider stratagems like the orbital laser or walking barrage for a fire and forget approach that will keep you out of harm's way whilst your super destroyer crew burns a hole through the heart of the enemy. Now, earlier in this training program we covered stratagem choice, and some of the most popular and arguably most important stratagems of all are those that take out large targets. This is where communication becomes essential. On Helldive, you'll find moments where the hordes are relentless and could even be up against multiple Terminid Bile Titans or automaton tanks at the same time. In these situations, you might be tempted to throw everything you have at the enemy, but a veteran knows to stay calm and keep a cool head, only using what they have to. Communicate to your team before you throw your stratagem to ensure there's no doubling up from your squad mates. One rail cannon strike on a Bile Titan, for example, will leave them crippled, and they should only need a single headshot from the likes of a disposable launcher or quasar cannon to finish them off. This is always better than using another stratagem with a large cooldown attached. You'll be thankful for this measured use of ordnance later when another high-value target appears. Now, if you've laid eyes on a scene like this before, you'll know these patrol groups can be the bane of any Helldiver squad. We know you'll be tempted to spread managed democracy in quick fashion, distributing a hail of lead into the enemy cranium with all due haste, and whilst that is an admirable approach, Helldivers in the field have reported higher numbers of reinforcements called in by patrols on Helldive difficulty missions, and as such, they suggest a modicum of restraint until your squad mates can join you in your attack. This will ensure minimal chances that reinforcements are called. To make this even less likely, consider the use of stratagems with large areas of effect like Eagle cluster strikes, or even the use of an airburst rocket launcher or grenade launcher to clear out the enemy before they can signal for help. If you're set to drop into your first missions on Helldive, consider the following. The mission always comes first. That means samples, secondary objectives, and destruction of enemy assets take a backseat to the mission. If you're on your very first Helldives, this ensures that you're getting in and out before things have a chance to get messy. If you weren't aware of this already, the longer you are in a mission, the more enemy reinforcements will continue to build. This becomes difficult to manage for even the most experienced of soldiers when around 15 minutes remains before your super destroyer leaves the area of operation. Do whatever you can to extract aboard your Pelican before this point, and if that means just doing the main objective, that's much better than failing the mission. This will help you learn the ropes and how far you can push the timer before you are overwhelmed. Once you get comfortable, you'll be able to do more secondary objectives and bring peace to the galaxy in true Helldivers fashion. And if you're feeling particularly heroic, one strategy deployed by the most daring of Helldivers is to drop on top of an objective location and call in immediate ordnance. This works particularly well with Terminid hatcheries, where a 500 kilogram bomb will take out most if not all of the Terminid eggs, allowing the squad to move on quickly with maximum amounts of time remaining. This is, however, a big risk, as you might not have time to call in your support weapons before the enemy is on top of you, so make sure to consider your teammates' thoughts on the matter before dropping in. The same principle applies to secondary objectives, where you can drop in and complete the objective before pursuing the main mission. Now, considering what we've just said, it's important to realize that even the best laid plans can fall by the wayside when the battle gets fierce, especially when nearing the end of an operation as enemy reinforcements begin to build. If absolutely necessary, do not be afraid to tactically advance away from the enemy in favor of completing an objective in the opposite direction. At this time, Super Earth Command would like us to stress that this is not a retreat, as those are specifically reserved for traitors and cowards. Rather, this is simply pushing forward in an alternative direction to enemy presence. Staying on the move, and more importantly staying ahead of an overwhelming force, will allow you to complete objectives, find better ground, and allow for stratagems to recharge. You may even find that some of the enemy forces lose track of you altogether. This is especially applicable to blitz missions, where you'll have a very limited amount of time to get the job done, and staying on the move will allow for a quick extraction before things get too crazy.
Would you like to know more?
Alright, so we're nearing the end of this training program, but before we wrap this broadcast up and send you back to the front lines, we wanted to share some general tips with you from experts. These will be short and sweet, but will help extend your life in the field considerably. First up, always use the resupply. Now, we know you likely learned this one in basic training, but it's even more important when going on a Helldive mission for the purpose of keeping your stims and grenades topped up. Don't overlook using the resupply just because your magazines are full. You'll thank yourself later if things get hairy out there. Next up, consider using different armor depending on your mission. If you're going up against the bot menace, devastators equipped with rocket pods can very quickly become a pain point for divers everywhere. Using armor equipped with explosive damage reduction capabilities will significantly improve your chances of survival. Most of these come with heavy armor, which is an amazing choice should you be on a defensive mission where you're not likely to be moving around too often. If you want to maintain mobility, however, there are currently just two options, both of which are available for the low price of just 250 super credits exclusively to the Superstore. Keep an eye out for the B-24 Enforcer and the FS-34 Exterminator. When these armors are available for purchase, you should snap them up whilst you can and support Super Earth's dedicated armor manufacturers with your well-earned credits. It's also worth noting that after some recent developments from those same manufacturers, armor suits with over 100 armor rating will reduce damage from headshots. So if you're looking for the best protection possible for going up against the bots, medium armor types with extra padding modifiers can make for a very beneficial choice. Many veterans also swear by armors that allow for the carrying of 2 extra grenades or 2 extra stims. You'll find both of these to be incredibly useful in a Helldive. Before we say goodbye, by, we have one last little-known tip that General Brash himself has sent in for us. Let's give it a read, shall we? He says, sometimes a fist is better than a bullet. If you're surrounded by hunters, show them the firm hand of democracy during their leap attack to make them think twice about sneaking up on a Helldiver. We believe what General Brash is trying to convey here is that a melee attack will stop a leaping hunter in its tracks, causing it to reset its position and take damage from the impact. Most importantly, it could preserve your life that little bit longer. That brings us to the end of this training program, and more importantly to the end of your Helldive training. With this knowledge from veterans across the galaxy and the help of Super Earth's finest scientists and manufacturers, you should now find yourself well placed to spread managed democracy and become one of Super Earth's most lethal weapons of the war for peace. Remember, if you'd like to see more training videos like these, be sure to subscribe to this network as we continue to broadcast all the best advice direct to your Super Destroyer. Thanks folks, and we'll see you all in the next one.